I admitted my cheating past, changed my life, became a wife and mother. And now my husband is digging up my worst sins, humiliating me, threatening divorce, and saying I deserve the pain. I'm going to try to tell this as honestly as I can, even though it's uncomfortable and doesn't paint me in the best light. I think the full context matters. My husband, 43 male, and I, 40 female, have been together for 12 years and married for 9. From the outside, we look stable. We've built a life, shared responsibilities, and have weathered a lot together. But the foundation of my adult relationships is messy, and lately I've been forced to really confront that. In my mid-20s, before my current husband, I got married very young. Even before the wedding, I knew deep down that it wasn't right. I remember vividly trying to call the wedding off. I wasn't dramatic or cruel about it. I was scared, uncertain, and honest about my doubts. That conversation ended with my then-partner telling me he would hurt himself if he couldn't be with me. I was shocked. I felt trapped by guilt and fear, and I started questioning my own instincts. I told myself that maybe commitment would fix things, that marriage would magically turn uncertainty into love. It didn't. That marriage wasn't abusive in the traditional sense. There was no screaming, no violence, but it was empty. He felt more like a roommate or a close friend than a partner I was in love with. I felt emotionally numb, lonely, and deeply ashamed that I felt that way. Instead of ending it properly, which I should have done, I imploded. During a night out, I had a one-night stand. I didn't plan it. That's not an excuse, just the truth. It happened because I was unhappy and looking for validation in the worst possible way. After that, instead of pulling myself together, I spiraled further. I began an affair with an older married man who traveled interstate for business. He had a wife and young children. We met up multiple times, usually in hotels, living in this strange, secret bubble that felt separate from real life. I knew it was wrong. Every part of me knew it was wrong, but I compartmentalized it and pushed the guilt down because facing my reality felt unbearable. Eventually, his wife found out, and the affair ended almost immediately after that. There was no dramatic ending, no grand declarations, just shame, fallout, and silence. I was still married at that point, still living a life that didn't feel like my own. Not long after, I started a new job in the city. My boss, who is now my husband, began flirting with me occasionally. He knew I was married. I knew that wasn't okay. At first, I brushed it off completely. He jokes around a lot, and I genuinely thought it was harmless banter. Over time, though, we started talking more. Not flirting at first, just talking. Real conversations. Emotional connection. I felt seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. That emotional connection crossed a line. I developed feelings, and eventually, we started a relationship while I was still married. I'm not proud of that. But I won't lie about it either. Things moved fast after that. I left my marriage, moved out, and started a life with him. For the first time, I felt genuinely happy. Not excited in a reckless way, but calm, grounded, and understood. Our relationship felt natural, like something that fit instead of something I had to force. Early in our relationship, within the first year, around 2013, I made a point to tell him everything about my past. I didn't want secrets hanging over us. I told him about the one-night stand. I told him about the affair. I told him how ashamed I was of that period of my life. He was devastated and mortified, understandably. We had long, painful conversations where I answered every question he asked. I didn't minimize it. I didn't justify it. After a lot of discussion and reflection, he chose to stay and give me a chance. We built our relationship on that transparency, and over the years we married, grew older, and tried to move forward. I have never cheated on him. I have never come close. But my past has never truly disappeared, and now, years later, it's resurfacing in ways that are forcing both of us to look at whether trust can really survive history, even when time has passed. This is where things have become unbearable for me, and where I feel like my past, something I believed I had faced, owned, and transformed from, is now being used as a weapon against me. Recently, my husband started asking me to tell him my cheating story again. Not in a general sense, not in a help me understand what happened back then way, but asking for very specific details. Timelines.
Who said what?
What I felt. What I did. What I thought. He wanted it laid out piece by piece, almost like he was interrogating a version of me that no longer exists. I refused. Flat out. And it wasn't because I was hiding anything new or because there was anything I hadn't already disclosed years ago. It was because I am deeply, profoundly ashamed of that period of my life. I regret my actions more than I can put into words. I regret the pain I caused my then husband. I regret the damage I inflicted on another woman and her children. Now that I am a wife and a mother to 2 young boys myself, I feel that guilt even more acutely. I cannot imagine the devastation I helped cause, and it makes me sick to my stomach to think about it. I don't want to relive it. I don't want to narrate it like some story for consumption. I don't want to be reduced to the worst choices I ever made, especially when I have spent more than a decade actively trying to live differently. What my husband seems to either not understand or not care about is that I didn't just move on and pretend it never happened. I did everything I knew how to do to change, as a human being. I sought therapy. I confronted why I made those choices. I faced the parts of myself that were weak, afraid, approval-seeking, and avoidant. I went as far as traveling to Thailand and attending a Buddhist retreat. I shaved my head. I lived as a nun for weeks. I took an oath not to commit adultery. For me, it wasn't symbolic or performative. It was a spiritual breaking point and rebuilding. A line in the sand. A promise to myself about the kind of person I would be from that moment forward. I know people love to say, once a cheater, always a cheater, but I know myself. I know my heart. I know the cost of my past actions, and I know, with absolute certainty, that I could never betray someone like that again. The idea alone fills me with dread and disgust. That part of my life feels like it belongs to a different person, someone I worked very hard to grow away from.
My husband doesn't see it that way.
When I refused to go into graphic detail again, he told me that I need to work on my insecurities. He said that my refusal makes him feel unsafe, that he can't trust me if I won't reopen those wounds for him. He framed it as my problem, my failure, my deficiency, as if my boundaries are evidence of dishonesty rather than trauma. Then he escalated it. He threatened divorce.
Calmly, casually.
He said he would be happy to do it. He told me good luck financially, because I would have nothing. He reminded me, more than once, that he is financially savvy, that he has offshore accounts, that he knows how to protect himself. I've been a stay-at-home mom for the last 5 years. I only recently started a low-paying part-time job. I have no savings, no assets, no safety net. If he walked away tomorrow, I genuinely don't know how I would survive. The reality of that terrifies me. What hurts even more is the way he talks about contribution. He sometimes asks what I even contribute financially, knowing full well the answer. I do nearly everything at home. I cook. I clean. I do the laundry. I manage the household. I do yard work. I handle the kids' baths and bedtime routines. I carry the invisible labor of running our family. When I've tried to say that contribution isn't only measured in money, he either dismisses it or ignores it entirely. I feel trapped. I feel small. I feel like my past is being held over my head as justification for emotional and financial control. I feel like no matter how much time passes, no matter how much growth I've done, no matter how faithful and present I've been as a wife and mother, I will always be on trial for who I used to be. I finally broke down and told him to ask whatever he wanted to ask. I said, "Go ahead. Ask me. I've already told you everything years ago, but if this is what you need for the sake of our marriage, then ask." I did it even though every instinct in my body was screaming not to, even though I knew reopening this part of my life would hurt me deeply. I told myself I was doing it to save my marriage, to show transparency, to prove that I wasn't hiding anything. So he started asking. And as I answered him, I could see it on his face, the disgust, the contempt, the disdain. His expression would harden. His tone would change. Sometimes he wouldn't even respond right away, just sit there looking at me like I was something dirty he'd stepped on. Other times he would respond with comments that felt less like questions and more like punishment. It didn't stay contained to those conversations either. He started weaving my past into everyday life, throwing it back at me casually, cruelly, like it was a joke or a fact that justified anything he said to me. One moment that will never leave me happened when our 5-year-old was complaining about discomfort in his genital area. We were checking him together, just being parents, and I asked my husband if everything looked normal. Without missing a beat, he said, "You've seen a lot of dicks in your life, you tell me." I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. I froze. I didn't even know how to respond. Our child was right there. That wasn't a question. It wasn't a joke. It was humiliation, plain and simple. Other times he would bring up his sister. He told me that she knows all about my past, that early on she hated me and thought I was a terrible human being. He didn't say it gently or neutrally. He said it like a verdict. Like I deserved to be despised. I remember thinking how easily he could have said, "My sister knows your past," and struggled with it at first, but instead he chose words designed to wound. To remind me of my place. To make sure I never forgot how he sees me. He also dragged my parents and my sister into it. He said my parents messed me and my sister up because they were strict when we were growing up, that we weren't allowed out much until our late teens. He said we have no morals. He said this knowing he doesn't like my sister, knowing how much family already weighs on me. It felt like he was dismantling my entire identity, my upbringing, my values, my character, and reducing me to a collection of flaws and failures. He tells me outright that he doesn't trust me, that he believes I will cheat again. No matter what I say, no matter how many years have passed, no matter how faithfully I have lived my life since then. Inside myself, I know the truth. When I made peace with myself in that temple, when I took that oath, something fundamentally shifted. I know I could never hurt someone that way again. I know the cost now. I live with it every day. But none of that seems to matter to him. What stops me now isn't the questions themselves. I don't mind answering what he asks. What stops me is what comes after, the criticism, the mockery, the cruelty. Every answer I give feels like handing him another weapon. I told him this. I told him that the way he speaks to me, the things he says, feel like a stab in the heart. I told him it hurts me deeply and makes me shut down.
He scoffed.
He told me I was playing the victim, that I was blaming him instead of taking responsibility. When I said his words hurt me, he looked me in the eye and said, "Good." He said, "That's a you problem if you feel that way. I'm just telling you the facts." That word, facts, echoes in my head, as if cruelty is truth, as if humiliation is honesty, as if my pain is irrelevant because he has decided it is deserved. For more context, my husband studied psychology and was top of his class. He's told me many times how easily things came to him, how professors praised him, how he outperformed others. But he never continued down that path. According to him, once he experienced the practical side of psychology, he realized he didn't give a F about other people's problems and said he had zero empathy for other people's issues. He says this almost proudly, like it's proof of his strength or superiority. So when I finally gathered the courage to suggest counseling because we are clearly not on the same page, and I feel like we are spiraling, he snapped. He said, "I am AFING shrink. I don't need to see a shrink to tell me what I already know." That sentence crushed something in me. It felt like the final door closing. Like there was no neutral ground, no mediator, no safe place where my voice could exist without being dissected, dismissed, or weaponized against me. Since reopening my past, I feel completely unmoored. I don't feel hopeful about our relationship anymore. I wake up every day with a pit in my stomach and go to bed with the same heaviness sitting on my chest. One morning, very early, I noticed my husband had been on my phone. I don't even know why I checked, but something in me felt uneasy. When I looked at the search history, my heart started pounding. He had searched things like how to know if your spouse is cheating and how do cheaters get away with it. Seeing that confirmed my worst fear. No matter how many years have passed, no matter how faithful I've been, no matter how much of myself I've rebuilt, he still sees me as a cheater first and a wife second. Or maybe not even a wife at all, just a risk he's constantly monitoring, a problem he's waiting to catch. Since then, a dark depression has settled over me. It feels heavy and suffocating. I cry almost every night after everyone is asleep. Sometimes I cry silently into my pillow so no one hears. Other times the tears just fall without sound, like my body is leaking grief it doesn't know how to hold anymore. My thoughts have gone to very dark places. I've caught myself thinking about just ending everything, about how quiet it would be if I didn't exist anymore. But those thoughts terrify me because the only thing that stops them is my children. My babies are the only reason I keep going. They are the only light I can still see clearly. I feel ashamed even writing this. I ask myself constantly if I'm just throwing a pity party. If I deserve this pain. I know I was a piece of shit human being earlier in my life. I know I caused real harm. I carry that guilt every single day. I don't deny it, minimize it, or excuse it. I truly, deeply regret who I was and the pain I caused. But I also know, deep in my bones, that I am not that person anymore. I believe it. I live it. I've changed my entire life around those values.